Amid the bustling crowd, no one noticed a little boy crying out for his parents. The boy stood amidst the hurried footsteps, his eyes lost and filled with panic. The loud chatter, the clattering of shoes on the cold concrete. But no one saw him. Passers-by were absorbed in their own business, no one paying attention to the presence of a crying child. "Dad, Mom," the boy called in a choked sob, his small hands reaching out, searching for familiar figures, but there was no one, no reply. The boy took a step forward, but each step made him feel more lost. Thousands of eyes around him didn't see him. Thousands of footsteps unaware of how confused he was. He felt like a grain of sand lost in an ocean of people. Suddenly, the boy felt something different. A large figure was approaching, causing the crowd to part slightly. It was Max, the German shepherd dog he always adored. Max walked up to him, his silky fur shining and eyes bright. The boy looked up and saw the comfort in Max's eyes, a presence so strong and warm. Max didn't need to say anything. He just stood there, the dog's eyes expressing all the loyalty and unconditional protection. The boy tightly grasped Max's thick fur, his small hands clenching as if to find a steady support. "Max, where are my parents?" he asked, his voice soft yet full of worry. Max merely glanced at him, then turned to face forward. The dog knew that now, the boy wouldn't have to face his fears alone. Max would be his watchful eyes, sharp ears, and steady feet. No more loneliness, no more confusion. Max would lead the way, protect him. The crowd continued to rush past, unaware of the small change. But to the boy, Max was the only friend he had at that moment, and together they would overcome any difficulty. The boy and Max continued walking, Max's strong and steady steps as if sensing every danger around them. The boy held onto the dog tightly, feeling a sense of calm knowing Max was by his side. But still, the feeling of anxiety didn't leave his mind. A few empty streets began to appear in front of them, and the boy began to realize he was drifting farther from familiar areas. The streets of the city, once surrounded by tall buildings, now seemed empty and grim. The bustling crowd gradually disappeared, leaving only the footsteps of the boy and Max echoing in the stillness. Suddenly, there was a strange sound from behind. The boy turned, his tear-filled eyes wide with worry. A group of people, scruffy and with fierce looks on their faces, were heading toward him. They didn't see Max, only noticing the small and vulnerable boy. One of them laughed loudly, the laugh sounding dry like metal scraping against each other. "Look, a lost kid. This is easy. Anyone see him?" One of them chuckled. A deep fear surged in the boy's heart. His heart raced in his chest. But immediately, Max stood in front of him, fur bristling, sharp eyes locked onto the group. Max didn't bark, didn't make a sound, but each step the dog took was solid, as if warning, "If you keep coming, you'll face my determination." The group continued to move forward, but Max didn't budge, his eyes never leaving the strangers. The boy felt a wave of protection from Max. "Max, don't hurt them," the boy whispered, but his voice couldn't hide his fear. Max turned his head, his deep eyes looking at the boy, as if to convey a message. Then the dog turned back to face the group, preparing for a confrontation. One of the group members suddenly advanced, seemingly not believing in Max's courage. "What's a dog going to do?" he said mockingly. But as he stepped closer, Max suddenly lunged at him, his tongue flashing as if preparing to attack. The man quickly stepped back, hastily retreating. But it wasn't just one bad guy standing there. The group kept getting closer, and the situation grew even more tense. Max didn't yield. Each step the dog took was a warning, a signal that there would be no mercy if anyone got closer to the boy. Max's bright eyes stared at the enemy as if to say, "You don't belong in this world." And the dog would do anything to protect the one friend he loved. In this moment, amidst the dangerous steps, the boy realized more than ever that Max was not just a dog. Max was his truest friend, the only protector he had. The bad guys didn't stop, even though Max had made his warning clear. One of them sneered, stepping closer, unafraid of Max's determination. "What's this dog going to do to us?" he said, full of disdain. Before he could finish speaking, Max suddenly lunged forward, eyes blazing with anger. A deafening bark echoed, fierce and determined, causing the whole group to take a step back. Max's cold eyes stared straight at the group, as if saying, "Don't take another step." The boy looked at Max, his eyes wide with fear. But he was too young to fully understand what was happening, only feeling the invisible protection Max was giving him. The boy couldn't speak, only standing there, clutching Max's fur. But the others wouldn't back down. One of them suddenly pulled out a knife, the blade gleaming in the fading light of the afternoon. The boy saw it and froze in fear. But Max was unfazed. The dog slowly advanced toward the man, his sharp eyes locked on the threat. "Put the knife down," Max growled, his growl rumbling like thunder in the still air. The others took a step back, feeling the power and ferocity of Max. The man with the knife wouldn't give up. He moved closer, holding the knife toward the boy. But Max wouldn't let him take another step. Max lunged forward like the wind, his powerful strike sending the man stumbling, causing him to fall to the ground. The knife flew away, no longer a threat to the boy. The others in the group began to realize that Max wasn't a dog to be dealt with lightly. They looked at each other, startled and afraid. The leader signaled for them to retreat. "Let's go," he barked. "We can't deal with this." Max stood firm, not attacking further. The dog simply looked at them, his cold eyes as if saying, "You won't have a chance to hurt the boy." When the bad guys retreated, Max turned to check on the boy, ensuring that he was safe. The boy, still unable to speak, buried his face in Max's thick fur, tears streaming down. But this time, it wasn't fear, it was deep gratitude. Max was the only friend, and the strongest protector he had. After the bad guys left, Max still didn't lower his guard. The dog stood tall, eyes scanning the surroundings, ensuring there were no lingering threats. The boy, still scared, felt much safer when he looked into Max's eyes. For the first time during this entire journey, he felt like he wasn't alone anymore. The boy hugged Max tightly, his small hands clutching the dog's fur. "Thank you, Max," the boy whispered, though he knew Max couldn't understand his words. But Max's unwavering and affectionate gaze spoke volumes. As if to say, "It's okay now, I'll always be here." Max seemed to notice something was wrong. The dog turned around, looking down the quiet, empty streets ahead. A sense of vigilance rose within Max again. The quiet sounds of footsteps and strange people still echoed in the distance. Max couldn't ignore the hidden danger. The boy began to feel the tension in the air. But before he could fully grasp it, a shadow suddenly appeared in front of them. A man, dressed in rags, his eyes gleaming with cunning. He stepped closer, his gaze showing no sign of goodwill. "Hello there," he said in a hoarse voice, as if hiding something. "You two seem lost, don't you?" Max immediately stood in front of the boy, eyes fixed on the man. The dog didn't bark, but his entire body tensed. A silent warning. The boy didn't have time to speak before Max took a decisive step, not allowing the stranger to come closer. The man paused, as if seeing the determination in Max's eyes. But he didn't back down. He smirked. "A guard dog, huh? But do you think it can stop me?" But Max wasn't fazed. The dog stepped forward, each movement strong and sure. The boy felt Max's unwavering protection. No matter how hard the man tried, the dog was ready to fight, ready to protect the boy at all costs. The man saw the determination in Max's eyes and seemed to realize that he couldn't easily reach his goal. He swallowed hard, his gaze shifting. "I think I'll let you go," he said, his voice softer now. "Be careful, don't get lost again." Without hesitation, the man turned and left, leaving the boy and Max standing in the quiet space. The boy looked at Max. A weak smile appeared on his face, though his eyes were still full of concern. Max didn't say anything, but his bright eyes were always locked on the boy, as if saying, "I'll always be here, and I will protect you no matter what happens." The boy hugged Max again, this time a firmer hug, as if wanting to entrust all his faith in the dog. Max was his only friend, and he knew that with Max by his side, everything would be okay. After the strange man left, Max and the boy continued their journey, but neither of them knew that the challenges were far from over. The boy felt himself becoming more and more attached to Max. Each step the dog took was like a promise of protection, a promise that the boy would never have to face danger alone. However, the boy could also feel Max's fatigue. The dog had been with him since they left home, always ready to protect, but perhaps even Max needed rest. So, the boy decided to stop for a while and find a quiet place to rest. They entered a quiet park, where no one else was, only the sound of the wind and rustling leaves. The boy sat down under a tree, comforting Max, as if wanting to reassure the dog that there was no need to worry too much. Max lay down beside him, eyes still alert, watching the surroundings. Despite being tired, Max couldn't fully relax. The dog still sensed some unclear dangers lurking somewhere in the space. The boy could see the tension in Max's body, but also understood that Max would never let him face anything alone. "Max, are you tired?" the boy whispered, though he knew Max couldn't answer with words. But just the presence of the dog made the boy feel safe. Max turned his head, bright eyes looking at the boy, a look full of affection, as if to say, "I will never leave you." They rested for a while. But then, suddenly, a strange sound came from a distance. Max immediately stood up, ears perked. The boy also felt that something was wrong. In that moment, Max rushed forward, not knowing what was coming. The boy hurriedly stood up, but couldn't keep up with Max, though his small legs weren't strong enough yet. His love for Max made him unwilling to leave the dog behind. The boy ran after him, shouting Max's name. "Max, wait for me." When the boy caught up with Max, they stood before a shocking sight. A pack of wild dogs, rough and menacing, were standing in their way. They growled, eyes full of hostility. The boy could only stand still, afraid, looking at Max. Max was unafraid. The brave dog stood in front of the boy, barking angrily, warning the wild dogs to stay away. But the wild dogs wouldn't back down easily. They charged forward, and Max was ready to protect the boy. A tense confrontation unfolded. Max fought fiercely, each leap and growl proving the strength and resilience of the dog. The boy stood by, unable to do anything but watch and hope that Max would keep him safe. Max knocked down one of the wild dogs, but there were still others charging forward. The boy, seeing Max getting tired, began to feel helpless. "Max, don't hurt them," the boy shouted, but it only made Max even more determined to protect him. Finally, after a tense battle, Max defeated the wild dogs. Though exhausted, Max still stood firm, protecting the boy without backing down. The boy rushed to Max's side, hugging the dog, tears flowing, not from fear, but from deep gratitude, as Max and the boy continued their journey through the quiet park. The boy's parents were frantically realizing that their son was missing. At first, they thought he was just playing nearby. But when they searched for a while and couldn't find him, "We need to keep searching," the boy's father said, his voice strained with exhaustion and fear. The boy's mother kept crying, even though she had tried to suppress her emotions. "Please, we have to find him." The police continued to investigate, contacting people around them and checking the nearby security cameras. However, all efforts yielded no results. There was no sign of the boy or Max. The situation was growing increasingly tense. As time passed, the worry in the boy's parents grew stronger. A police officer approached them, his eyes filled with disappointment. "We've checked all the areas within a wide radius, but there's nothing. It seems like the boy and the dog left this area a while ago." The boy's mother nearly collapsed, her eyes red from crying. "Where's my son? Where's Max?" She couldn't stop thinking about the boy, about the dangerous situation her son might be in. "Please, I can't lose my son." The boy's father tried to keep calm, but he too felt desperate. "We can't give up. There must be a way to find them." The police continued their efforts, but every lead grew colder, even with the situation broadcasted and help requested from other search teams. Up to that point, there had been no trace of the boy or Max. The boy and Max, meanwhile, had moved quite far from that area. Although unaware that his parents were frantically searching for him, the boy still felt anxious inside. He couldn't understand why his parents weren't near, but with Max by his side, he still felt safe. Max, with all his resilience and loyalty, led the boy through empty streets, unaware that the search by his family was heading nowhere. The protective dog wouldn't let the boy face any danger, no matter what. The night grew darker, and the dim street lights weren't enough to dispel the worry in the boy's parents' hearts. They had searched through the streets, calling out for their son, even asking everyone they passed, but no one had seen the boy. The police continued the search, checking every nook and cranny, broadcasting the information on the radio, but all they received was a deafening silence. "What should we do now?" the boy's mother asked, her voice almost choking on the tears. She felt like all efforts were in vain, and the mental exhaustion made her want to collapse. We've searched everywhere. Why are there no signs? The boy's father looked around, his gaze filled with resolve. But inside, he too was overwhelmed by rising despair. We can't give up. There must be a way. There has to be. However, his words couldn't hide the fear in his heart. With every passing moment, their hope faded. The police continued to check the security cameras in the surrounding areas. But even with many eyes searching, no one could offer any information about the boy or Max. We can't do any more, the officer said, his voice filled with clear disappointment. We've combed through the entire area. There are no clues. The boy and the dog may have left a long time ago. The boy's mother nearly collapsed, her eyes swollen from crying. No, it can't be. My son can't be missing like this. The boy's father hurriedly reached out to embrace his wife. But his own heart could not calm. Fear had overtaken him, and he felt powerless. We won't stop, no matter how far we have to go. The police began to pack up their equipment, preparing to call off the night search. But they still hadn't given up hope, continuing to contact other search teams for assistance. However, the air grew more suffocating, and the silence became unbearable. Meanwhile, the boy and Max kept moving. The boy was becoming tired and didn't understand what was happening. He realized his parents weren't around, but couldn't figure out how to call them. He felt increasingly worried, and loneliness seemed to cover his young heart. Max, though tired, kept his resilience. The dog didn't take his eyes off the boy, always protecting him step by step. Even though they had gone so far, Max never let the boy leave his protection. The dog always led the way, his sharp eyes scanning the surroundings for any danger. After a while, as the night grew later, the atmosphere grew colder. The boy, exhausted, sat down under a large tree, his head bowed. Max, why aren't we going home? The boy whispered, his voice full of confusion. Though he couldn't fully understand everything, he felt something was different in this dark night, as if something was threatening him. Max stood up, walked over to the boy, as if to assure him that no one would hurt him while Max was there. But Max's eyes still didn't stop scanning, as though sensing danger still lurking. The boy held onto Max's fur and gently asked, "What do we do now, Max?" Max couldn't answer, but the dog looked up at the boy. Once again, as if to say he would protect him not just with strength but with absolute loyalty. The sense of safety Max gave the boy made him feel a little lighter, though he still couldn't understand the surroundings. As for the boy's parents, they kept calling each other, persistently contacting the police, but despite everything, no trace of the boy and Max could be found. A sense of desperation took over them. They had done everything they could, but the truth was they couldn't find their son. The boy had walked with Max through many quiet streets, but now, his small legs seemed to have no strength left. The feeling of exhaustion was overwhelming his body. But Max's resilience and loyalty made the boy not want to give up. Each step Max took was still firm and determined. And though the boy didn't fully understand everything, he felt the protection from the dog, enough to soothe his anxiety. Max stopped at a street corner, looked ahead, and then turned to look at the boy. The dog's bright eyes seemed to say, "We're close to home now." The boy looked toward Max, and suddenly, a familiar feeling rose within him. He realized that home wasn't far away. With Max's guidance, the boy began to feel closer to his family. But his steps grew slower, as the exhaustion seemed to overcome him. Max turned back, knelt beside the boy as if to say, "You can lean on me." As they walked through the familiar streets, finally, they reached the neighborhood near home. The golden lights from the houses in front made the boy feel warm, as if something was waiting for him. Meanwhile, at home, the boy's parents sat silently on the porch, their eyes blank, staring into the distance. The long nights of searching without any news had brought their worry to its peak. All they could do was pray, hoping their son would return safely, and that Max would always be with him as a loyal friend. "Will our son come home?" the boy's mother asked, her voice hoarse. She had cried so much, and now, she could only sit there, staring into the empty space. The boy's father sat beside her, unsure of what to say to comfort his wife. The night had grown late, and the silence in the air was suffocating. Tears fell from her cheeks, but she no longer had the strength to wipe them away. They sat quietly, their fragile hope that, no matter what happened, their son and Max would come back safe. Suddenly, a soft noise came from the end of the street. The boy's parents' eyes brightened. And they both looked up at the same time. In that moment, two familiar figures appeared in front of the gate. Two figures, one large and one small, were approaching their house. The boy's mother stood up, her hands trembling. It's my son, and Max. It was the boy and Max, the ones who had been separated from their family for so long. Finally coming home, the boy smiled, though his face was still filled with exhaustion, his eyes lighting up when he saw his parents. Max, standing beside the boy, with a proud expression, eyes filled with protection and strength, looked at the boy's parents as if to say, "Your child has returned." The boy's mother couldn't hold back her emotions, rushing over to hug her son. "My dear, you're back. We were so worried." The boy's father, with his eyes glistening, quickly embraced them both, thanking Max with a gentle pat. Max stood silently, his eyes calm but full of happiness. The dog had fulfilled his mission, protecting the boy until the end. And now, Max just needed to see the happiness in the eyes of the boy's parents to know it was enough. The whole family stood there, hugging each other in the warm light of their home, their hearts full of gratitude and love. Finally, after so much worry, they were reunited. Max, the loyal friend, had brought the boy home safely, fulfilling his promise to protect him.